Hey, kids, and welcome once again to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. We are here coming at you for August 15th through the 21st with the Astrology and, of course, Dreams as ever. Man, oh man, I can safely say so. We're sort of at the breaking away point. We're sort of we're on the other side of the mountain.
Awesome.
Technically.
Ooh, okay. Well, I don't know how I feel about the technically part.
The qualification.
Yeah.
Well, here's something that I always have to sort of remind people as I talk about astrology, whether it's here in this format or elsewhere, is that like your narrative is your narrative. If you're moving through a difficult year because of other energies that are hitting your chart and your life is taking you through the mill, just because the biggest sort of thrusts of challenging energies from July and the first half of August are behind us, it doesn't mean that suddenly your life gets different and you're like, it's still your life. It's the same thing that I've had to, I've actually come up with a little solution about this, is that in my day-to-day holding of astrology, on my daily Astro Alert subscription series and on the Red Robe Astrology videos, is I used to call days where there weren't any active planetary transits, but there was one like yesterday and there will be one tomorrow.
Right.
I used to call those quiet days. I've changed that language to transitional days, right? Because there's no such thing as a quiet day.
Right. And astrology is not a binary.
Right. And exactly. Everybody is tapping into it at the individual level. And as an astrologer talking to hundreds and thousands of people at a time, I have to talk about only the general astrology. So yes, with that fixed full moon conjunct Saturn last week behind us and the thrust of Uranus in the North Node in Mars behind us, and that very difficult July full moon with, Capricorn and Pluto behind us, the biggest bump in the middle of 2022 is behind us. But if you're going through a narrative that makes things more challenging, that supersedes just last week's bump, life life's on life's terms. Like, I'm in my Saturn return this year. It's a hard year no matter what, right? I'm grateful that the full moon conjunct my Saturn last week is behind me, but I'm still in my Saturn return. So the biggest difficult months of the year of 2022 were July and the first half of August. And we come into a little bit of a couple of months of a little bit grace and ease compared to what the last two sort of lunar cycles have brought us. And trust me, we got plenty of stuff at the end of the year. So we've got Mars is going to go retrograde and starts his shenanigans in October. We've got eclipses at the end of October and into November, right? So that's the next very difficult turn in the wheel is October, November. And we're in the sort of in-between transitional time between this big bump we're just coming away from and the next one that's up ahead. Not going to be quiet by any stretch, but you can gauge a kind of barometric sense of what the last 6 weeks have brought you energetically, and you sort of create a volume number of 1 to 10 of what the last 6 weeks were, and know that the volume's going to go down a bit, though it's concomitant with whatever you as an individual are struggling through or working with or trying to accomplish at this time. There's a little something I want to mention. This is not a transit. It's not major, But there is a quality right now of healing and expansion that's possible because the planet Chiron and the planet Jupiter are hanging out together in the cosmos. They're not close enough to be sort of grabbing our attention and saying conjunction between, the healer and the expander, but they're close enough to be technically influencing each other. So again, not a transit. There isn't like a date to look at for this. It's just an overview that something that's present in the atmosphere right now that has been around for a couple of weeks, but we haven't been able to really tap into and benefit from is this healing and expansion, connection between the great healer saying, "Hey, come this way for some healing," and then Jupiter nearby saying, "And as you do, you will feel a sense of expansion into the possibility of greater abundance, prosperity, and good fortune." And the sign that they're both in is Aries, and so if you do know your chart and you know what house is ruled by Aries in your natal chart, you can expect that that's sort of the place where the most expansive, healing sort of
Mhm.
energy is available for you. I'll throw in here while I'm talking about Chiron, also not peaking right now, but something that's rising up this summer, winter down under, that will be part of the rest of the year's energy is Chiron holding the inconjunct, the great eliminator angle with the south node of the moon. South node of the moon carries all of our baggage and the past and all the shit we're trying to let go of and free ourselves of. That's a south node consciousness. And so, with Chiron, the great healer, holding the exit strategy to the past, we are supported now and through the rest of the year through the process of looking at wounded spaces inside of our psyche, rise up to higher levels of functioning because we experience some healing and expansion courtesy of Chiron's movement. And that is present for the rest of this month. And I wanted to mention that as we go, so that even if the big clunky energy of new moons and full moons that push these ideas forward in earnest are in our rearview mirror, we're still benefiting from the consciousness of take a look at your wounded spaces, breathe some light and love into those wounded spaces. And as you do, you'll be dropping chunks of past emotional patterns that are now ready to be, released.
Man, Michael, I really feel that. Literally as of last night, I had a personal revelation in my own attachment
Ooh.
style.
Ooh, like your relational attachment style.
Yeah, yeah. And so it allowed me to reflect on past experiences in a whole new way. And so I'm just like, oh my God, okay, bring it on, month. Like, let's go, Chiron. That's wild.
Well, you're killing me, Joe, because I can't like that rings similarly to some of the things that I'm looking at in my personal experience this year as well.
Mm.
Because, having really been through tremendous amounts of healing in my own journey and being far enough along in that healing journey to be able to say definitively I have healed my ancestral wound. I have freed my embodiment from the enormity of the blockages that were installed there, not just because of my parents and who they were, but because of the ancestral wounding that was part of what caused that to occur, which is how it all works. So I can stand comfortably and confidently in saying out loud, I have healed every wound of the consciousness that my family lineage demanded of me. But anxious attachment lives in the body.
Yeah.
The body feels the ease when connection feels present and the discomfort when connection seems to wane, although that's an illusion. And so I'm delighted to hear that 30 years apart, we're both working on anxious attachment.
And I would say, I mean, I think I feel comfortable saying this for myself, but also for the listeners. it's uncomfortable. Like the new is
Yes,
uncomfortable, but it seems we have a real opportunity to
absolutely.
just fucking sit with it, man. Like lean
Yep,
into that and see what
yep.
happens.
That language is killing me too. Again, there are things, there are experiences that I had in some of my more intimate connections in the last week or two that fit that model exactly of sitting in a conversation where information was being offered to me by someone I'm intimately connected with that was difficult to hear. And I just sat there and took it in. And it was awkward, vulnerable, uncomfortable. And the result of moving through that discomfort without changing the dynamic because I was uncomfortable yielded beautiful, intimate nuggets, but they didn't come right away. And I had to be uncomfortable to allow myself to receive them. So, beautiful reminders for all of our listeners that this is how it works, that these patterns bubble up when they're ready to bubble up and be removed when they're ready to be removed. And this entire second half of the year has a lot of this possibility built into it, not just now, but for the rest of the year. There's a personal planet ingress happening. Mars is changing signs this week. So let's just do a little the week at large segment where we talk about where the personal planets are and what we can expect in, mind, emotions, and body. Mercury is still in Virgo, so communication is precise and detail oriented. We've got Venus still in Leo, so our emotional body is on fire and expressive and creative. Love language is about generosity and affection. And feelings are big. Feelings are expressed publicly more vociferously with the planet of the emotional body in such a fiery, extroverted sign. But it's Mars in Taurus shifting to Mars in Gemini that's important this week. That change happens this coming weekend.
Hmm.
So on Saturday, we start the day with Mars where he's been for the last handful of weeks, which is a fixed sign, one of his detrimental signs. He is not comfortable in this sign. Mars, about action and movement, is slowed down in the feminine Venus ruled sign of Taurus. And so part of the challenging energy of the last month has been this fixed cross in the sky that was so dynamic in last week's full moon. Now, that fixed energy ain't going anywhere this year because some of the anchors of that fixed energy are moving slower. And we'll be talking about fixed signs for the rest of the year. But in terms of the immediate challenge of fixed energies, which is we want to move, and the energy says you can't.
Hmm.
So Mars in Taurus giving way to Mars in Gemini is going to create a lot more movement, action, and activity and connection after this weekend when the planet that helps us make decisions is in a sign of intellectual understanding, lots of talk and debate and movement itself. Gemini has movement in it, although it's intellectual movement, yes, but with the planet of action out of the sloggy Taurus, the energy's too slow and stubborn to really let my action flag fly. Once Mars moves into Gemini, we've got a much different energy around how we make decisions. And those decision making moments are going to require more thought, more debate, and I like this, more conversation with others in order to make choices that are right for you. Mars and Gemini helps us consider both sides of something and the impact of both decisions you might be considering making.
Hmm.
Of course, one of the shadows of this placement will be indecision and indecisiveness. But I do think that it's one more layer of releasing some of the more constricted energies that July and the first part of August were sort of driven by. We will feel an ease and a lightness starting next week as a result of Mars changing signs. Something else happens this weekend on Saturday that's of great importance involving Mercury. Mercury's not actually going to turn around and go retrograde until next month, but he starts his 3-act process on Saturday. That means from Saturday the 20th of August through September 9th, Mercury is going over territory that he's going to go back over when he goes retrograde on September 9th through like October 2nd. Then he'll wrap up what he uncovers in the retrograde cycle from like October 2nd to October 20th. But you don't need to worry about any of those dates because those are far away. All you need to do is start paying attention this weekend to any communication challenges that arise. Mercury retrograde is designed to help us go into challenging communication and thought process patterning that needs to be reworked. So while Mercury is hitting the points in the cosmos he's going to come back to, it's like the brochure for the retrograde retreat we're going to do next month. We get alerted to anything that we might have to take a look at in a more uncomfortable and difficult and unconscious sort of way when he is moving backwards next month. And if you pay enough attention during the retrograde shadow, that process is less bumpy, less difficult, and most importantly, less surprising. You know in advance what you're going to be either renegotiating or having to return and revisit with somebody, or any of the ways that Mercury retrograde might bring something back. It's in these first 2.5 weeks that we are literally given every piece of information we need to know to make that process more powerful and effective. And it starts this Saturday on the 20th. I'll be talking about this at the top of next week's podcast as well as we continue that shadow. But it is important and valuable to be paying attention in this way so that when Mercury turns around next month, we can actually benefit from it. I will point out that this particular Mercury retrograde is going to be very agitated, more so than the other Mercury retrogrades we've already been through this year. We sort of measure that by the geometry that Mercury is creating, that he's going to create 3 times. Like that's sort of how this works. What I'm describing is that in the retrograde shadow, Mercury's going to be opposing Jupiter, sort of causing a big over-the-top sort of reactivity experience. The Sesca square, the 135 degree angle that's just about frustration and agitation, Mercury's going to make to the North Node, Saturn, and Uranus, which means that the entire next couple of weeks, starting on Saturday, but mostly again September, this is a September difficult process, but we get hinted at it now. Just trust me on this, kids. We're going to be agitated, frustrated, and potentially overwhelmed by this Mercury retrograde next month. So the more attention you can place on your neck up experiences starting this weekend, the more graceful next month's deep dive is going to be. So the 2 things that we're going to talk about in next week's podcast is a continuation of Mercury and how to, sort of navigate the rest of his shadow and get ready for the turnaround. And Virgo season. Virgo season actually starts on Monday of next week, but that's the day the podcast is released. So I'm going to save that for then. And in the meantime, everybody, have at it.
It's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully, your dream will make it onto the show. This week we have a call-in dreamer. Mary's calling from Ecuador. Hey,
Ooh.
Mary, what you dreaming?
Love that.
Hi, Zoe. Hi, Michael. It's great to be here with you both.
Yay. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, as I had written in the email, I am not used to having really dark or scary or, bad vibe.
Bad 5 years. Yeah. In fact, Zoe clued me in on that. They told me that this was a pretty spooky or juicy dream. So yay.
It certainly is that, I guess, but certainly not what I'm used to. My dreams are usually very nice, and I get something out of them when I remember them. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
in this case, it started out very pleasant, walking on a forest trail with a man whom I, in real life, conscious life, don't know or recognize. But in the dream, the vibe was like a friend, colleague kind of situation. And we're, exploring the forest, identifying plants, talking about the ecosystem, that kind of a thing. And then all of a sudden, we walked into a shed, and inside the shed, it was just completely empty, just a completely empty shed. The forest behind just went away. And the man was my brother. I have two older brothers, and this was the youngest of the two, whom I really have not had a relationship with most of my life since we were teenagers. And the wall of the shed across from the door was completely missing. And outside of that was just vast frozen ocean. It was all ice. But right in front of the shed structure was, that really intense blue color that you see when you get pictures of icebergs and the water around them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it was that color right outside the shed. And my brother stepped out and started to walk. And I saw that color and I thought, no, I'm not going out there. And I turned back. And then when I turned around again, the ice sheet had tilted and he fell into the water underneath the ice sheet, but I could see him just floating there in that blue water with cold, dead eyes, just wide open, staring at me. And I started screaming his name and panicking and, yelling, no, no. And
Yeah.
there was nothing to grab, no way to help. I knew if I went in, try to save him, although he
Yeah.
appeared quite dead, that I was immediately dead also. And I just was screaming, and that's when I woke up.
Damn. Sounds very vivid. Like it was a vivid nightmare. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was, I woke up in that kind of that, oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah, that state.
It was only like 4:30 in the morning, and I was like, oh, I'm not going back to sleep. I got up.
I totally get that. I get that. So let me ask you a couple of questions. In your family dynamic, when you were kids, what was your relationship in the family dynamic to your voice in the family? How was it received? What was your experience of either being supported to have a strong, powerful voice or not?
Well, I think we talked about this in one of your classes. I think in the voice class,
No
I
doubt.
think I was the loudest, but not in a healthy way.
Ooh,
I
that's a
had
clue.
a lot of anxiety and, depression through my life, and
Mhm.
I don't know, I'm a pretty fiery person, so there was a lot of anger and just a lot,
Okay.
I don't know, I guess I'm more about demanding, but it was not appreciated. I was always, too sensitive or
That's a good clue. And what about what about this particular brother? How did he hold a position that was antithetical to yours in terms of passion or emotion or loud voice?
I don't really know, honestly. Though, I mean, my brothers, they were only a year apart, so they were thick as thieves when we were a kid.
Mm.
His position became more apparent when we were older because my oldest brother was, kind of like the, praise Gary.
Oh, like the star of the family.
Yeah, yeah, and, with my dad,
Certainly. Got it.
when my dad divorced my mother, he separated the brothers from the sisters, so there was a separation there between the girls and the boys. And,
Oh, that's interesting.
boys were the important ones, and,
Right. Girls were less important. Okay.
and the oldest brother was the most important one, and I think
Got it. Got it.
that was a lifelong issue, perhaps even to this day for the brother in this dream.
Well, and so that leads me to my next question is that the estrangement that you experience today with your brother that you sort of indicated maybe have started back in your teenage years, what was the essence of the disconnect between the two of you? From your perspective.
And I think we were a disconnected family. None of us have a relationship with each other as adults.
Yeah, the dream is reflecting that.
And this brother in particular always seemed particularly distanced from everyone.
Got it. Perfect. So you were certainly the most passionate, outspoken, angry one, and he was perhaps the more aloof, disconnected, quieter-ish.
Well, he had some anger issues later on too. I mean, yeah.
But I'm talking about if you were to divide you two into a binary, forget about that, oh, he's a little angry and you're a little not. In the binary of it, it's safe to say that you carried the anger and he carried the disconnect.
Yeah.
All right. All right, well, let's dive into the dream and where this dream is revealing some of this stuff to me. Why I asked about communication as the sort of entree to talking about the family dynamic is the color blue. Blue is the throat chakra color. So anytime blue comes up in a dream, that's the first place I'm going to go.
Mhm.
And since this is a family dynamic dream, I'm comfortable with blue and the throat chakra as a way to understand the dream's meaning. Because often, in family dynamics, the voice is the impact of how that dynamic was when we were younger. And the color blue reminds me of that. And the frozen water, all of this water that's frozen says cut off from emotions, not warm, sort of an icy sensibility, which is another thing that you're describing that your family dynamic sort of engendered was less connection and more iciness disconnect. That section of the dream is like showing you some impact of this dynamic. But let me jump back for a second to go more chronologically through the dream. We start with you in deep consideration of your integrated self. How old are you, Mary?
68.
Okay, so not a youngster. And so integration is more likely. Well, I'm talking about the beauty of growth that comes
I
with
know.
time and chronology, honey. I wouldn't trade it for a thing. That they really do say that youth is wasted on the young, and I'm inclined to agree. But you are living in the best integration that you possibly can because A, you've got some time on your hands, age and chronology, and you're on the path of healing. And so this walking on walking on the trail in the woods is a very intimate symbol of your walk through life, right? It's not an urban setting. It's so the dream vision isn't reflecting how you connect with society or culture or others. This dream symbol, trail in the woods, is your personal private walk. And in it, you're with a man that is collegial. That to me is an integration moment. I don't think your brother is present in this first part of the dream. I think only you are. Walking through your intimate space is saying, I know who I am. I love plants. I love ecosystems. I love these kinds of thoughts. And I'm integrated and whole. Myself and my masculine presence walking together. That's the first part of the dream. That's Mary is with Mary. Sheds are always a nice little symbol for like something creepy's going to happen. It's like a building in the middle of the woods. It's like, oh, okay, The woods is an organic domain. A shed is an inorganic domain, a man-made domain. So when we walk into a shed in the woods, we know that we're in some consideration of what have I constructed from my humanness. I'm going to go explore. So I go into the shed. And in that shed, the nugget of the dream reveals itself. The forest disappears. Remember, the forest is about a shadow exploration. We go into the woods to learn more about ourselves. So you're into the woods. You're going to learn more about yourself in this shed. And in the shed, we get the reflection of the family dynamic, where there's this disconnect, an iciness to passion, and something about your brother kind of being taken down by the iciness, the lack of warmth, the lack of fluidity and movement. And you're watching the impact of how disconnected your family dynamic coulda, woulda, shoulda made you. But it impacted others more than you. You are exploring your own organic walk through the woods, free from the emotional disconnect promised to you by your childhood that absolutely took your brother down as you sort of watch and witness. There, but for the grace of God, go I. I know not to go out into that icy, disconnected place where there is no passion and emotion and connection. And allowing that to happen in the dream for him while you protect yourself, to me, is a reflection of wisdom through those 68 years that has put you in a place now where you can accurately understand who you are on your own personal walk, free from the impact of disconnect, coldness, and discombobulation that the family dynamic offered you, caused you to have to grapple with. And I think this dream signals that you're on the other side of some of this integration process.
Whew, dude.
Does it resonate, though? I mean, that's what's important.
Absolutely. I mean, I never would have saw that coming. This is the color blue. I mean, that's super, super interesting. And I mean, that is the process I have been deeply entrenched in since moving here, totally about meditation and really diving into that deep shadow stuff and allowing
Yup.
those old beliefs
Uh-huh.
and behaviors
Uh-huh.
stemming from all of those beliefs coming to the surface. And I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of my full-time job these days. So
I love that because, honey, it is your full-time job. And it is true and accurate that when you let the instrument get very, 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 very quiet, like where you have moved, then the instrument will bubble and vibrate with the challenges that are still in there, that are quiet and soft and deeply below the surface of consciousness, but they rumble. And this dream is one of those moments of, you move to Ecuador, you quiet everything on the outside so you can deepen your inner experience of your walk through the woods. And in so doing, your body rewards you by saying, here's another layer of that wound from the family dynamic that you are releasing so you can be, in a much more integrated, embodied experience yourself. I love it.
sounds groovy to me.
Well, thank you for sharing, Mary, and enjoy your adventure in Ecuador.
Thank you so much, Michael. That really, I mean, this dream just really knocked me for a loop. And, it just keeps coming back to my mind because, I just couldn't make anything out of it. But this is really awesome. I really appreciate
I
it.
hope this helped. I'm really glad.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mary.
definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.